Hi there. I wanted to spend a bit of time putting some thoughts together for you about how we come to look and study passages in the Bible. A number of people have been in touch with us over the last little while asking, where do I start? How do I go about it? And so I thought I would just do a very simple look at a simple passage of scripture and then give some pointers as to how to understand it. So I hope this is useful for you, and I hope it gives you some ideas as to how to approach a passage of scripture. Of course, there's lots of different ways of studying the Bible. You can study themes, you can study books, you can study people, you can study specific chapters and what have you. So anyway, we'll start off with this and see how we go. I want to read from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 25, verses 1 to 13, and I'm reading it from the New Living Translation. But as I'll say probably later on, it's good to read from a number of different translations. It gives you an overview of what's being said, and sometimes it comes at you at a different way. But this is from the New Living Translation. Matthew chapter 25. Then the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 bridesmaids who took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were wise. The 5 who were foolish didn't take enough oil for their lamps, but the other 5 were wise enough to take along extra oil. When the bridegroom was delayed, they all became drowsy and fell asleep. At midnight they were roused by the shout, "Look, the bridegroom's coming. Come out and meet him." All the bridesmaids got up and prepared their lamps. And then the 5 foolish ones asked the others, "Please give us some of your oil, because our lamps are going out." But the others replied, "We don't have enough for all of us. Go to a shop and buy some for yourselves." But while they were gone to buy the oil, the bridegroom came. And those who were ready went in with him to the marriage feast, and the door was locked. Later, when the other 5 bridesmaids returned, they stood outside, calling, "Lord, Lord, open the door for us." But he called back, "Believe me, I don't know you. So you too must keep watch, for you do not know the day or the hour of my return." It's interesting when you read a passage like that, you can have some immediate reactions. Say things like, well, why didn't they share? That's not fair. And why did he say he didn't know them? Well, I'm not going to give the answers to that, but I want to give you some tools that can help us look at how we look at a passage. And we're going to look at this one as an example. So where do we start? Well, I've put down 5 points that I think will be useful for you when you approach a Bible passage. Start with prayer. Prayer is a very good place to start in anything you do. And there are some scriptures that I like to use when I'm coming to prepare myself to study a passage or learn something or prepare a message. Ephesians 1:17, and personalizing it is often excellent. It goes like this: "I pray, Lord, that you would give me your spirit of wisdom and revelation in knowing you. I pray that the eyes of my understanding would be enlightened as I come to read these scriptures." Jeremiah 33, God says, "Call to me and I will answer you. I'll tell you marvelous and wondrous things you could never figure out on your own." And Psalm 119 verse 8 is a very good prayer. It says, "Lord, open my eyes to see the wonderful truths in your instructions." So that's a good place to start, is start by praying. Secondly, observe. Observation is very good when you come to a passage. Ask the W questions: who, what, where, when, why, and it gives you some insight as to what's going on. Who are the characters? Well, in this particular passage, the characters are the bridesmaids and the bridegroom. Who's speaking? Well, Jesus is speaking to his disciples, giving them some instruction. What's going on? What happens? It's a picture of a wedding that would be commonplace in those days in that situation, and it may have been that Jesus was passing by and saw a wedding going on and used it as an illustration. That was how he did teach. He saw things that are everyday life, like the farmer sowing his seeds, and he brought a lesson to his disciples to teach them something that he wanted to help them grasp a bit better. And so he may well have been seeing a wedding going on and saying, you know, the kingdom of heaven's like this, and trying to explain something like that. What do we know about the people? Well, weddings then were probably very different to what we know of a wedding now. Then the bridegroom called the shots. He dictated the time when he would come and get his bride, and people had to wait, and they didn't know when he would come. It was up to him, and weddings then could go on for days. Very different to the weddings we have these days, where everybody waits for the bride to come. So it's interesting trying to find out a little bit more about the historical background for information, and sometimes it gives you a little bit more understanding of what Jesus was trying to portray at that time. When does it happen? Was it in the past? Is it in the future? Is it a now thing? These are all questions that we can ask of the scripture that we're reading. Where was it? Has that got some bearing on the passage that you're wanting to understand? Why is it being said? Why it happened, and to who was it being spoken? These are the interesting things that bring out the sort of what we can see, that is written before us. They help us understand what's being said. So that's prayer. Observation of what we can actually see is written down. Then there's interpretation, and that comes out of the observation. Often what is trying to be told to us, we can understand as we observe. So they go hand in hand, observation and interpretation. We need to ask questions again to find out the answers. Things like, who is being spoken to in this passage? Who's saying it, and why? They're the observation things as well, but they're going a little bit deeper. And so ask questions to find out more answers. Why did Jesus want to tell them about the kingdom of heaven? The answer can come as you observe and as you look at that scripture and realize that he was trying to tell his disciples something more about who he was, what he was here to do, and what his kingdom was like. Then thirdly, there's the application. And that's often where we want to jump to, because we want to know, what's this speaking to me about? What do I need to do to apply the lessons in my own life? And sometimes we find that is quite a directional change. We need to realign our thinking to what the Bible is saying, because it's different from what we have immediately thought. Just like in this passage where we immediately jump, a wedding, I know about weddings, but we know about weddings in today's context, not in the historical context that Jesus would be teaching from. And so a little bit of research, which you can do online, find out about wedding traditions, customs in Jesus' day, may well shed a little bit more light on what he was trying to impart. Sometimes it helps us to do that. Sometimes that's not where we're looking to receive from. We just need to take the whole of the context. I think one of the things in Bible study is that we can do it out of interest's sake, to find out historically, and that's interesting, that's nice to know. But most times when we're reading the Bible and passages, we're wanting it to change our lives. We're wanting it to affect us. We want it to speak to us and to help develop our relationship with God. And so often the questions that we need to ask when we're reading it is, how is this going to affect my walk with God? Is it drawing me deeper to Him? Is it just that I'm wanting to tweak my behaviour? Or is it drawing me closer to understanding what He is about and who He is? Ask yourself, how does this help me understand the character of God, the nature of God, and His love towards me? These are all questions that we can ask in applying it. I said before at the beginning that it's quite useful to have a couple of translations or even more to get a better understanding of where Jesus is coming from and what the passage is about. On Bible Gateway, you can see on the screen 5 different translations of the same passage all at the same time, and that's often very useful. I often have a more traditional translation like the New King James Version, a very up-to-date one like the Passion Translation, and I often use the Amplified because it gives you a bit more depth of understanding as to the language that is being used. And so all these things are very useful when it comes to trying to find out what this passage is about and what its relevance is to me today. And the last thing I would say is share your thoughts with somebody. Jot down notes about what you see in that passage, what you're learning from it, and then share it with somebody. Maybe at this particular time you can't go to somebody and say, can we sit down and do a Bible study together, but we can talk about it on the telephone or message people and say, what do you understand by this? This is what I feel it's about. Have I got this right? Is there more to it? And share your thoughts, and that's very useful because sometimes other people can see something that you haven't seen there, point out another aspect of things as very useful. These points are all useful for yourself when you're doing your own Bible study, but they're also useful when you come to doing studies like we do on a Wednesday night on our church together nights, either when we're not in lockdown or on the Zoom meetings where we study a scripture and things together. Knowing what we're looking for and how we're going about it is often very useful. And so maybe you'd like to take that passage of Matthew chapter 25 about the ready and the unready bridesmaids and see what you make of it. And feel free to jot some thoughts down. Get in touch with me if you want to take it further. Just see where it leads. Remember, this is one passage, and maybe over the next few weeks I can pop on your screens again and look at another passage, look at a different aspect of what Jesus is teaching. But this is just a start, and I hope it's been helpful. Thank you for joining me today.